Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'll be breaking down UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Teixeira. And before we get into this, make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, leave a comment, and tap the notification bell because I'm going to be dropping full card predictions along with betting breakdowns and other UFC related content. And yeah, I gotta say, for a Fight Night card, we got some pretty solid bouts on display here. We got Old Man Wonderboy taking on a grappler, something we all know he isn't very keen on doing. And we got Old Man Cater taking on a red-hot prospect in Steve Garcia. And, of course, we have the long-anticipated UFC return of the absolute legend, Lauren the Crack Fiend Murphy, which I, for one, cannot wait for. So let's just jump right into this, boys. So for the first fight of the night, we have the up-and-coming grappling phenom, Fatima the Archangel Klein, who is currently sitting at a whopping minus 1,500 favorite, taking on Melissa Super Melly Martinez, sitting at a plus 750 underdog. And in this fight, we got probably the coolest nickname in WMMA, I gotta say, taking on arguably one of the worst nicknames in all of MMA. And that is kind of indicative of these two ladies' skill levels. This is going to be the most one-sided fight on the card, in my opinion. I think Melissa Martinez may be the worst fighter on the entire women's roster. Literally, her only claim to fame is the fact that she has a brother that fights in the UFC. They're like the only brother-sister duo in the entire UFC. And her brother is a bantamweight in the males division named David Martinez, who, spoiler alert, I'm not really that big on either, but I think he definitely deserves his roster spot much more than his trash can of a sister. She literally got signed to the UFC off a split decision win over a 7-5 can, who just got choked out in the first round of the PFL. I mean, Martinez is supposed to be some sort of striker, I guess, with a Taekwondo background, I think, but I haven't seen anything that has wowed me yet, and her grappling is literally non-existent. Then in her debut, she took on Elise Reed and made Elise Reed look like a title contender, getting absolutely dominated, and she got dropped by her as well. If you're getting dropped by Elise Reed, the fight should just be stopped and you should just get cut right there on the spot because that is absolutely unacceptable. And then in her next fight against Alice Ardeline, she won, but she didn't win. That was probably one of the more egregious robberies in recent memory. All three judges scored at 30-27 for Martinez. That is the pure definition of a pre-written scorecard. On no planet could you give Martinez the first and the second where she was getting absolutely pieced up by Ardeline, who, in my opinion, she's okay. She's a little underrated, but she isn't exactly high level either. Klein, on the other hand, is very good. She lost to Jasmine Jasdavicius in her UFC debut, up a weight class, and she held her own and actually outstruck Jasmine to the head, despite being a primarily grappler herself. And there's really no shame in losing to Jasmine. I think she's really good, and she'll probably be fighting for a belt sometime here in the next few years. And then in her next fight, she completely dominated Victoria Dudakova, who, she isn't the greatest, but she made quick work of her, and Dudakova's grappling is 1,000 times better than Martinez's. And I really don't see a world where Martinez wins this, but she has literally zero value. But maybe you can target Klein inside the distance because I do see her finding a finish in this one. All right. Moving on up the card, we have Mike Beast Boy Davis sitting at a minus 1,200 favorite. And he's taking on Mitch, the Fight Stalker Ramirez, who is sitting at a plus 700 underdog. Now, despite the odds in this fight being very wide, just like the last one, I do believe this fight has a chance of playing out a little closer. Mitch Ramirez, despite what the odds have to say, he isn't complete garbage, you know. He actually has somewhat of a well-rounded game, and Mike Davis just looked absolutely awful in his last fight against Fares Ziam. And while you could say that Ziam has looked really good as of late, he has. I thought in the Davis fight, it was more so that Davis looked really bad as opposed to Ziam looking all that good. Like, I just remember in the first round, Davis was pulling guard for some reason and essentially just gave up top position for almost the entire first round. It was super weird to watch, especially considering I picked Davis in that fight. But once Davis started throwing his hands, he looked really good, but he simply just didn't do enough in that fight. So, I don't know if all the injuries are catching up with him or if it's lack of motivation that he's spoken on before, but I know for a fact that Mike Davis of old would go out there and absolutely wipe the floor with Ramirez, who didn't look particularly good in his last fight either, which was against Thiago Moises, where in that fight he basically did nothing for 3 rounds and was finished by leg kick TKO in the 3rd round. And the main thing that concerned me in Ramirez's last fight was the fight IQ. Like, you're getting outlanded and eat it up with leg kicks at range, but you don't do anything about it. Like, why not mix in some takedowns? You actually have wrestling ability. Mitch Ramirez was the only guy to take down Carlos Prates before Ian Gary was able to. And that's not an easy thing to do. But no, he decided just to get pieced up at range before ultimately getting finished via leg kicks. And like I said before, the Mike Davis of old would absolutely decimate Mitch Rodriguez. But I don't know how much he truly is declining. So for that reason, I will go with Davis, and I will take him via points or by knockout, as I truly believe he's better everywhere. And he can find similar success that Moises did. But don't be shocked if Rodriguez goes out there and gets it done on the scorecards. And at a plus 700, I'd say that's honestly worth a sprinkle. All right, let's see who's next. We got Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Walter Walker. Who we got next? So we got Kennedy, African Savage, Nzechukwu, who is currently a minus 210 favorite, taking on Walter, the Clean Monster Walker, who is currently sitting at a plus 175 underdog, and who, fun fact, happens to be Johnny Walker's Russian half-brother, oddly enough. And guys, I'm going to be taking the dog in this one. I'm picking Walter Walker to get it done and to potentially find himself a finish. And, you know, despite Kennedy looking like a world beater so far at heavyweight, just look at his level of competition. He's been fighting nothing but slow, one-dimensional, fat heavyweights who pose zero threat of a takedown. And while you might say they shared a common opponent in Lukasz Brzeski, a fight that Kennedy was able to find a knockout in, and Walter actually lost to him in his UFC debut, I don't believe that tells the whole story because styles make fights, and you can't just do MMA math. Of course, Walter isn't going to knock Lukasz out on the feet like Kennedy did because Walter isn't knocking anybody out on the feet. That simply isn't his game. And not to mention that was a short notice debut for Walter where he came in looking noticeably more pudgy than he has as of late. And you could have even scored that fight to Walker as Lukasz didn't do much but land jabs and leg kicks like Sean Strickland. And if you go back and look at Kennedy's 205 run, it's not like he had brick wall take defense by any means. He was getting dominated on the ground by Danilo Marquez before finding a comeback finish in the third. And that's been a running theme in Kennedy's career, right? Where he loses rounds but ends up finding a late finish. But I don't think he's going to be able to cockroach his way to a win here. I really don't. Walker is going to come out from the opening bell looking to get this fight to the floor. And even if his first couple takedowns get stuffed, he's going to look to chain wrestle. And I do believe he'll find his way on top, considering he's not only going to have a wrestling advantage, but a size advantage as well. And once this guy's on top, this guy has some of the best ground skills in the entire heavyweight division. And along with his elite ground skills, Walter, unlike his brother Johnny, this dude's got an iron chin. So I really don't see Kennedy finding a late finish in this one. So give me the dog here to get the upset and to find either a submission or to get it done on the scorecards. Okay, so next up we have the people's main event, the long-anticipated return of Lauren the Crack Fiend Murphy, absolute legend who is currently sitting at a plus 475 dog, taking on Eduarda Ronda Mora, who is the favorite, sitting about minus 750 from the time of this recording. Now, despite Lauren's status as a bona fide UFC legend, she's still 41 years old, coming off a 2.5-year layoff, and that's not really something you want to see from an older fighter. And honestly, I can't remember a time where we've seen an older fighter come off a huge layoff like this and get the win. It almost always ends in disaster. The last time she even got a UFC win was all the way back in July of 2022, so exactly 3 years ago, and it was against Miesha Tate, who even at the time was still beyond washed. Eduarda, on the other hand, is someone who seems to have a lot of potential in the flyweight division. She is actually one of the main training partners of Jailton Almeida, and you can see it when she fights. Every time out, she's going to be looking to take the fight to the ground and absolutely dominate you from top position. And funnily enough, this is someone who started their career off at strawweight, but it was apparent from her debut that this girl is not a strawweight. She missed weight for both of her strawweight bouts, and in her fight against Denise Gomez, it was pretty clear that it was affecting her cardio because after the first round, she had absolutely nothing left in the tank. But ever since moving up to her natural weight division of flyweight, her cardio has looked a lot better, as we saw in her last fight against Veronica Hardy, where she was able to maintain a more steady pace, stay patient, and she was able to come through with a unanimous decision victory. And when it comes to women's fights where we have a grappler versus a striker like this, I'm almost always going to pick the grappler, especially when they have the age and physicality advantage. I mean, Mora is absolutely ginormous, even for flyweight. She could arguably be up fighting at bantamweight, so I really see this fight going much like the Walker and Nzechukwu fight, where Mora is going to look for the takedown early and often, and once she does finally get the takedown, that will probably be the round or even the fight. So with that being said, I do see Mora getting this one done, so give me Eduarda Mora to win this one either via decision or ground and pound TKO. Alright, next up on the card we got Jake, the Celtic Kid Matthews, taking on Chidi Bang Bang and Joe Kawani. Now, this is a fight I've been really going back and forth on, and I truly see it as the closest fight on the card, and the odds really reflect that as the books have them at about a pick'em. So, on one hand, we got Jake Matthews, who's primarily a boxer, but does have the ability to wrestle in his back pocket, taking on Chidi and Joe Kawani, who is a pure Muay Thai striker who is either looking to pick you apart with his 8 limbs or clinch you up and land elbows and knees to the body. But I gotta say, the more I thought about this, the more I'm leaning towards the side of Jake Matthews, who he's really impressed me as of late. And it finally seems he's putting everything together ever since that embarrassing loss to Matthew Semmelsberger 3 years ago. But since then, he's won 3 out of his last 4 fights, with his only loss coming to an absolute beast in Michael Morales, where there's really no shame in losing to Michael Morales. In his fight against Phil Rowe, he showed that he can handle a long and rangy striker just like Chidi. And not to mention, Jake Matthews is incredibly durable, only having 1 TKO loss on his record, which came against the GOAT, Kevin Lee, which was nearly a decade ago, and Lee got a ground and pound TKO where he was able to incorporate his wrestling, something that Chidi will not be looking to do. So in this fight, I expect Jake to be landing a lot more volume on the feet and probably mixing in some takedowns to give Chidi something to think about. So unless Chidi is able to land the perfect shot on Jake, I just can't pick him in this one. It's going to take someone who throws a lot more volume or someone who brings a grappling threat to beat Jake, and Chidi just doesn't really check either one of those boxes. And not to mention, Chidi is lacking something that is crucial for a fighter to have, and that would be heart. This dude wilts at even the smallest amount of adversity. We saw it in the Michael Oleksiejczuk fight. We saw it in the Gregory Rodriguez fight. When things aren't going this dude's way, he looks for a way out, and I just can't pick someone like that. And despite looking amazing in his last fight against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, I really think that was just a case of Zaleski's age finally catching up to him. But while in this fight, we have a primed and ready to go Jake Matthews, so I'll be taking Jake to get this one done. And probably on the scorecards, but I do see this playing out very close and may even end up being a split decision. And for that reason, I don't want to see any of you D-Gens betting your hard-earned money on this one. It's okay to watch as a fan once in a while, and if you do end up betting on this one, you may want to consider giving the old 1-800-GAMBLER number a call. Just saying. All right, moving on to the feature prelim of the night, we got Chris Action Man Curtis moving back down to welterweight, and who is currently a -320 favorite, taking on Max Payne Griffin, who is currently sitting at a +250 underdog. And this is a battle of 2 guys who I've never really been too high on, but this is the sort of matchup where Chris Curtis usually excels. On one hand, we got Max Griffin, who I guess is sort of a well-rounded fighter, but doesn't really excel in any particular area. And then we got Chris Curtis and his deformed titty. What the hell even happened there? Do you guys think he got that from fighting, or was he born like that? Anyways, Chris Curtis is literally just a boxer. Like, I don't think I've ever seen Chris Curtis throw a low kick. The stat says he has, but I'm not really buying it. If you ask Chris Curtis how often he trains kicks, he's going to look at you like you're speaking Chinese. Pretty much all this guy does in terms of training is hard sparring with his bestie, Sean Strickland, which does have its positives. Chris is extremely experienced and comfortable inside the octagon and possesses very good striking defense, unless your name is Jack Hermanson, and good takedown defense as well, unless your name is Nazarene Mavov. But along with his good defense, he brings good volume and he mixes up the targets well, cycling between the head and body often. And I say this is a matchup Curtis usually wins because when we see Curtis lose, it's usually to higher level competition like we saw in his last 2 fights. And to be honest, I personally thought he beat Brendan Allen, and he got robbed. But Max Griffin, on the other hand, definitely doesn't fall under the category of elite competition. He's a savvy vet who's always a tough out, but he hasn't had a good win in forever. And considering his only good wins are, I guess, Mike Perry and a beyond washed Carlos Condit. And on top of that, his last 2 wins have been split decisions. And his last win against Jeremiah Wells, I thought that was a robbery. I thought Wells won that. So in an alternate reality, this dude could be on a 5-fight losing streak. And he was getting touched up on the feet in his last fight against Michael Chiesa, which is a terrible look. So factoring all that in, I think it's pretty safe to say Chris Curtis gets back into the win column this weekend and takes home a unanimous decision victory. Also, guys, if you made it this far in the video, don't forget to hit subscribe, smash the like button, leave a comment, and click the notification bell because that really helps boost the video in the algorithm. And now let's move on to the main card. And oh god, this is just absolutely disgusting. Like, this should have opened up the prelims if we're being completely honest. This is just terrible. But we got Junior the Juggernaut Tafa, who is currently a -170 favorite, taking on George Tuco Tokos, who is currently a +140 underdog. And this fight is going to be god-awful. And on top of that, I think this fight could honestly go either way. I really do. Oddly enough, this fight will be at heavyweight, which is apparently Junior's natural weight class, despite always showing up at heavyweight with love handles. But I guess he's been wanting a fight at light heavyweight for a while. and the matchmakers have finally granted him his wish. And when it comes to Tuco, I'm obviously always trying to fade him because he's a literal scrub. But it pains me to say that he does have a path to victory in this fight, and that is with the wrestling. If you're able to cement top position on a Toffa brother, that's the round, and possibly even the fight, like we saw in the Walter Walker fight. Obviously, Tuco doesn't have anywhere near the ground game as a Walter Walker, but he has shown the willingness to shoot takedowns at least. He shot 9 in his last fight against Navajo Sterling and was able to get 3 of them. And Navajo Sterling is a CKB guy who all they do is in their training camp is drill takedown defense, so that's honestly impressive. And he was even able to get Zhang Mingyang down in their fight with the one and only takedown he shot. So this guy can wrestle, and I do believe he's going to do so in this fight. But I just can't pick him. Junior Toffa, despite being a fat, unathletic heavyweight, has the much crisper striking due to his kickboxing background. But that doesn't matter because I would pick a random bum off the street to have better striking than Tuco. His entire fighting style on the feet is literally just barroom brawling. It's so sloppy, so uncoordinated, and the crazy thing is he's going to come in here with a 4-inch reach advantage, but he doesn't use it. And not to mention, Junior is used to being at a reach advantage because he has literal T-Rex arms. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. He has a 72-inch reach at 6'3". Like, that would be short for a lightweight, but a heavyweight and light heavyweight, that may just be the record for the shortest wingspan at those weight divisions. So with that being said, as of right now, I'm going to pick Junior Toffa to win this one, but with extremely low confidence. But if Junior looks dialed in on the scales, like he actually took the weight cut seriously, and then that would in turn mean that he was actually doing cardio work for this fight, because the last fight out, his cardio looked atrocious. But to be fair, his takedown defense did look improved, so I do believe there is some decent value on Junior, especially if he can get his knockout at plus money, and this will probably be our last opportunity to fade Mr. Tokos in the UFC. But don't be surprised if he ends up missing the mark by like 20 pounds and this fight is scrapped altogether. But as for my official pick, I'll be taking Junior Toffa to win this one via knockout. All right, moving up on the card, we got Vitor Icao Petrino, who is currently a minus 650 favorite, taking on Austin Chinless Lane, who is currently sitting at a plus 460 underdog. And with this fight, much like the last one, we have a fighter debuting in a brand new weight class. But here it's the opposite of the last. Instead of a fighter moving down from heavyweight to 205, we have Vitor Petrino making the jump up from light heavyweight to heavyweight for the first time in his professional career. And I must say, I love this decision for Vitor. This is something that I love to see light heavyweights do, even though sometimes it works out, sometimes not so much. Cough, cough, we're looking at you, Ryan Spann. But in Vitor's case, I love this for him, and I love the matchup even more because, as you heard in the intros, Austin Lane simply does not possess a chin. And Vitor Petrino hits very hard. And I actually feel bad for Austin because I think he's a skilled fighter, especially for the heavyweight division. I mean, he was winning his last fight against a hyped-up prospect in Mario Pinto before Pinto was able to find the perfect shot and shut his lights out. And the fight before that, he beat the absolute fraud Robelis de Spain, a fight where Austin put some good money in my pocket. And like I said before, the dude is skilled. He can get takedowns. He can hold his own in the striking. He has a great build for the weight class, and the dude is just overall a freak athlete. But his major weakness, which I cannot stress enough, is the durability. It's simply just not there. And I believe it has to do with the fact that he used to be an NFL player. And generally when we see someone make the shift from football to MMA, their durability is lacking, probably from the repeated blows to the head that comes with playing football. We're looking at you, Greg Hardy. But if it wasn't for that, he'd probably be a top 10 guy at heavyweight. But if you don't have a chin at heavyweight, you just simply aren't going to make it that far. And now he's matched up against a guy who's not only much faster than him, but he's simply the more complete mixed martial artist. He has more experience in all areas. He's going to have a speed advantage anywhere this fight goes. And did I mention this guy hits like a truck? Because he does. The only thing we have to worry about is the fact that Vitor is making his heavyweight debut, and I want to see how he looks on the scales, but I do expect him to come in at a lean 235 pounds. And if that's the case, I think Vitor goes out there and makes it look easy. So give me Vitor Petrino to get this one via knockout. Okay, so let's see who's next. So we got Nate the Train Landwehr, who is currently a plus 220 underdog, taking on Morgan the Last Pirate Charrier, who is as of right now a minus 270 favorite. And guys, I think Morgan Charrier is massively overrated. I truly could not believe anyone was picking him to beat Nathaniel Wood, and there's not a chance in France that I'm picking him here. I'm going to be taking Nate the Train to get this one done as a dog, and at plus 220 odds, I'm just absolutely drooling at that line. I truly don't understand the respect that the books always give to this guy when he's literally the biggest can crusher in the UFC, and he's really just not that good. He's a Cage Warriors guy, which always has me skeptical. I can count on one hand the amount of good prospects that have came out of there. The rest usually end up as frauds, and this Charrier has just yet to impress me in the UFC. I guess he has somewhat of a well-rounded game, but he just doesn't do enough in the cage. He's one of the biggest minute losers I've ever seen. His entire fight strategy is predicated around winning moments, specifically looking for KOs. And could he KO Nate the Train? Sure. But I don't even think his power is all that, because in his last fight, he wasn't able to do anything to Wood. And Wood is chinny. I really see Nate the Train doing what he always does. Maybe he'll get hurt in the first, but he's going to weather that early storm and begin to put it on Charrier. And I see him coming alive in the second and third once Charrier begins to fade. And that's the thing about Nate the Train, right? There's a lot of guys in the UFC who say, oh, you got to kill me. But that truly is Nate the Train. You have to kill him if you want to beat this guy. And I just don't see Morgan with his low volume being able to do that. In Nate's fight against Jamal Emmers had Nate hurt bad to start the round, but he wasn't able to get him out of there. And I think not only does Jamal have comparable, if not more power than Charrier, he's just overall the more polished striker. Even though I do think Charrier is more durable than Emmers, he's never been knocked out, so I really don't see Nate finding the knockout like he did against Jamal, but I do see him taking the second and the third on the judges' scorecards. And how can we forget the fact that Nate is fighting in his home state of Tennessee, so the crowd's going to have his back, and Morgan has never won outside of his home country of France. So with all that being said, give me Nate the Train to win this via 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, moving on up to the feature fight on the card, we got Calvin, the Boston finisher Cater, who is currently a plus 115 underdog, taking on Steve Mean Machine Garcia, who is currently a minus 140 favorite. So Steve Garcia has been on a pretty impressive run as of late. He is currently on a 5-fight win streak, coming by the way of knockout. And this dude's nickname, Mean Machine, couldn't fit him any better. He's going out there every single time looking to seriously hurt his opponent with big overhands, uppercuts, knees, elbows. And he just looks so angry when he's out there. It can also be kind of intimidating. But with that being said, guys, I do think he's kind of overrated. Not as overrated as Charrier, mind you. I do see Steve Garcia as a future top 15 guy, but he's been given some very favorable matchups in his last 5 fights. And what I mean by that is he's been fighting guys with pillow hands. When I say this dude is chinny, I don't think you guys can begin to understand what I mean by that. He has been dropped so many times in his career, and I just can't get the visual out of my mind of him getting dropped like 4 times against Charlie Ontiveros, who is nowhere near UFC caliber. And if you look at his last few fights, he fought Kyle Nelson, who has decent power at best, but he is still yet to record a knockdown in the UFC. And he was only able to beat Kyle Nelson because Kyle Nelson doesn't know what a body triangle is. In the fight before that, he took on Sungwoo Choi, who is a literal can and does not possess a chin. And in the fight before that, he fought Melky Costa, who is physically incapable of hurting anyone on the feet. And then before that, he fought someone who actually has some power in Shailen Nurnebeki, and lo and behold, he got dropped. And finally, in the fight before that, on his first fight of the win streak, he fought Chase Hooper, who should have never been cutting down the featherweight to begin with, and could arguably be fighting at 170. And the way I see it, Steve Garcia is only on this long run because of the favorable matchups he's been receiving. While on the other hand, Calvin Kattar has been fighting nothing but savages. In his last fight, he fought Yusuf Zalal, who would absolutely decimate Steve Garcia. And then before that, he fought Aljo, who ragdolled him, but Aljo would ragdoll 95% of the featherweight division, including Steve Garcia. And the fight before that was the one against Arnold Allen, where he tore his ACL early in the second round. But we've seen guys like Rafael Fiziev and Tom Aspinall come back from ACL tears and look great, so I'm not even too worried about that. What I see happening in this fight is that these two are going to look to brawl in the center of the octagon. They both have very similar styles in that regard, but you have to give the pocket boxing advantage to Kattar. He throws much cleaner combos and is able to land with power, and he has elite durability. Kattar has never been knocked out in 32 fights, so with all that being said, I got to take the dog in Kattar. And although I do see this fight playing out relatively close, I'm going to be taking him to get this done either by a late rounds TKO or on the judges' scorecards. Okay, now this brings us to the main event of the evening where we have the big boys going at it. First up, we have the former title challenger and fan favorite Derek the Black Beast Lewis, who is currently a plus 225 underdog, taking on the absolute giant in Taliesin Shikao Teixeira, who is currently the favorite, sitting at about a minus 275, and who, fun fact, holds the world record for the world's longest torso. Bro would probably be like 5'10 if it was a normal length. But all jokes aside, I know that a lot of people are complaining about a Derek Lewis main event in Big 2025. And I get it, I really do, but come on guys, this should be an absolute banger. Both these guys are going to go out there and look to take each other's heads off, much like the Kattar-Garcia bout. And similar to that one, I think this fight is probably going to come down to who has the better chin. And from what little we've seen of Taliesin Teixeira, it seems he does have a very good chin, but that's not to say it can't be cracked by the Black Beast, who we all know just has crazy different power. I mean, you don't become the UFC's all-time knockout leader with average power. But my pick for this one has to be the newcomer Taliesin Teixeira, because from what we've seen of him so far, he seems to be part of the new breed of heavyweight who can do it all. He looks super dynamic in there so far, especially in the Justin Toffa fight where we saw him throw a very fast and untelegraphed head kick. and then immediately looked to shoot a takedown, which I really like to see. That shows that he isn't a dummy, and he's going to take the path of least resistance in the cage, which in a Tom Brother fight, it's to avoid the striking, and that is also the case here in a Derek Lewis fight. And even the takedown he shot against Taffa, I don't think he was fully committed to it or anything. I think he was just trying to give Taffa something to think about, kind of similar to what Ankalaev was doing against Alex Pereira. And in my opinion, that's one of the smartest things you can do in a fight against a dangerous striker like that, because you're going to constantly have them fight over and unders and having them to try to fight out of the clinch. But as we saw in Taliesin's last fight, he isn't just going to stall it in the clinch. As soon as he got that overhook with his right arm, he immediately looked to land that huge elbow that put Taffa down. And I see him doing very similar things in the Lewis fight, where he'll strike a bit, maybe shoot a takedown. But if he doesn't get the takedown, he'll still have the clinch, where he's going to look to land heavy elbows and knees up the middle. And when they're striking, he's going to have the speed advantage. I mean, this dude moves like a middleweight out there, while Lewis is basically lumbering in slow motion. So I pretty much see Taliesin having the advantage anywhere the fight goes. And the only path for victory I see for Derek Lewis is landing a big, gnarly overhand, which has essentially been his path to victory in every single fight he's ever had. But he's damn good at it, too. And to be fair to Lewis, he does have some pretty slick boxing for a big guy. And he'll throw a head kick once in a while. But as far as the pick, I got to side with the youth. I got to go with the more primed and well-rounded mixed martial artist. So give me Taliesin Teixeira to win this one by knockout. So that's it, boys. That was the full card predictions for UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Teixeira. Stay tuned for the betting breakdown coming later this week. And before you go, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, smash the like button, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And I'll see you guys next time.